So in this video, we're going to be talking about the supreme prophet of the dark side that was an equal of Emperor Palpatine, or at least a very near equal of Emperor Palpatine during the events of the original trilogy. Now this character is a dark side user, but he's not actually a Sith. He's a member of the supreme prophets of the dark side, which follow the Dark Force religion, which is actually completely separate power to the dark side typically used, or the area of the dark side typically used by the Sith. So they're similar to Night Sisters in the sense that they use the dark side, but it's a different area of the dark side. So the Prophets of the Dark Side are a Sith organisation started by, almost like a Sith splinter group started by Darth Millennial, who worship Lord Khan of the Brotherhood of Darkness. And their power centers around like prophecies, and it's all cosmic force based. All these guys are like your typical wizards, you know, they've got long black beards, and they all wear this robe that looks like you're looking into space, you know, it's got the stars on it, kind of like Lord Chronal. So you might have heard of this character most notably from the Jedi Prince series. His name's Kadann, and his power typically centers around like visions and prophecies and sensing the future, so it's very cosmic force based. I am going to do a video on the Dark Force religion and all the how it stemmed, where it originates from, and basically the deep mechanics of what it is, so stick around for that. I'll do that soon actually, because that links into this video. Now Kadann actually foresaw Palpatine's defeat at the hands of Luke Skywalker, and actually warned him prior to that about the strength of Luke, and Sidious just ignored him. He also warned the Emperor that Darth Vader would eventually betray him, and the Emperor didn't just ignore them then as well. But he actually came after him for advice and then just ignored him. And well, we know what happened, so we should have listened to him, shouldn't he? But anyway, the magazine Polyhedron 103 says that shortly after the Return of the Jedi, that Kadann is currently the most powerful Force user around, outstripping even Luke Skywalker. Indeed, Kadann's abilities come close to equaling the Emperor at the height of his power. So yeah, that's a pretty big statement. And yeah, if you just got one statement, then fair enough. You could just throw it out the window as just being a one-liner that just got through the fact check and Edison process, and you know, you can throw it out the window. It's a one-liner. But this same thing gets repeated a bunch of times. And him being an equal of, or near equal of Palpatine, is a key part of his narrative, you know, because he's foreseeing these things before Palpatine is, and he's warning them. And as we'll talk about later, Palpatine actually needs to get a blessing from Kadann to become Emperor. Abel Pena, member of the Star Wars Story Group and Star Wars writer, says in his 2000 blog, The State of the Galactic Civil War, posted on StarWars.com, he says that as the Supreme Prophet's power was the near equivalent of Palpatine's, it's unlikely that he was unnoticed by the Dark Lord of the Sith. That's in reference to Yavin 4, of course. All these guys are on Yavin 4, so given that Kadann's power is the equivalent of Palpatine's, it's obvious that Exar Kun will have been aware of Kadann's presence there. Now these books are set in 5 ABY, and they came out in the early 90s, so 1992, I think Love of Darth Vader came out. So the Palpatine that Kadann is getting compared to is the original trilogy, Emperor Palpatine. And the way it's talked about, of course, the Palpatine needing Kadann's blessing to become Emperor, which is linked by Abel Pena to the reason being that the prophets are his equals. So that's why he needs permission, you know, he needs a blessing. Which, you know, indicates that Kadann has been an equal to the Emperor all the way through, from when he became Emperor all the way up to, you know, in the original trilogy, he's an equal the whole way there. But of course, coming out in the early 90s, you can't actually attribute this to Revenge of the Sith Palpatine. You have to attribute it to the version of Palpatine that was in mind as having started the Empire back in the early 90s. And of course, none of those concepts from Revenge of the Sith had actually been introduced at that time, so you can't compare Kadann to Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine's power. But we do know he is an equal of original trilogy, Palpatine. So Kadann is pretty high up when it comes to scaling, when it comes to your rankings. Kadann is one of your top tiers. Although he's not necessarily good in a fight, because he's the type to run from a fight. You know, he's more cosmic, more mystical, more prophecy based, and you know, force trained sort of stuff. Now there are a bunch of retcons with this character. I'll explain all the retcons I plan on doing a little series going into some of like the stupidest Star Wars retcons in the past. I'll do a whole series dedicated to that, but he's a character riddled with retcons. The character Kadann that we're talking about in this video was actually retconned later to be false Kadann, who was actually a prophet named Rajar Ubuki. And then Kadann, real Kadann, was made into a completely different person who doesn't actually appear in any stories, but he's just the real Kadann. That doesn't actually change anything in this video. It doesn't actually change the ranking. If anything, you can just put Rajar Ubuki and real Kadann up there as equals of Emperor Palpatine, because although initially intended to be real Kadann, all of those statements about being, you know, equal to the Emperor now apply to false Kadann as well. As you know, you've got real Kadann as well that still gets those statements, who's said to be even more powerful than the false Kadann. So you've got two characters there who are both essentially equals to the original trilogy Emperor Palpatine, and that's Rajar Ubuki and Kadann. And you can I just view them as Kadann, to be honest, but if you want to get super technical, super specific, you do have two characters there. It's a silly retcon, but whatever. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and we'll continue in the next one with a video about Lord Khan. I want to go into all this Dark Prophet stuff and then do a lot of videos based around the new Sith Wars, because I feel like that's an era that's not really been explored that often, and I find it dead interesting, and those Sith are actually super top tier powerhouses, so we're going to explore all of that, so stick around.